How do you stay positive?
Very easily, actually. I've got goals, which obviously I write out personal goals, business goals. As the principle there, we're always striving for, good team performance as well as individual performance. But the big thing for me is, I guess I've learned over the years that you can't win all the business. It'd be great if you could.
Cut yourself some slack.
Yeah, and there's plenty of business out there for everyone. And I think if you just maintain a positive attitude, be professional, understand that owners have the right to choose whoever they feel most comfortable with. Sometimes it's not about commission or marketing or process. It's just about they get a vibe. So you can't control that. So I just focus on the things I can control, which is my attitude, turning up, doing my job, and the rest kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, attitude's pretty key, isn't it? I mean, especially if you're running a team. You've got an office, you've got a group of people. You can't turn up and be negative. It rubs off.
Look, it does, and I've found, especially in my team gets a lot of energy from my energy. So when I'm in the office, it's very positive, and everyone does feed off of my energy as a leader in there, and obviously the volume that we do, it gives everyone a bit of a kick in the pants for something to follow, and as salespeople, we're all motivated by success and competition, so it's great for the team. So yeah, if I'm having a bad day, it can rub off. So I'm very conscious of my attitude and my vibe when I'm in the office, absolutely.
Who motivates you?
I've got a number of trainers, and as I was talking off camera there before, there's a number of people within the industry who I feel are still far above my capability and experience, and I talk to them from time to time. And I think you need to have mentors, both in real estate and outside of real estate too. It's not just about this business.
Mentors or coaches?
Both. So I've got mentors and coaches. Yeah.
What do you look for in a coach?
I look for track record, to be honest. So
is that important, or is it more important that they make you feel uncomfortable?
No, well, track record obviously leads to that. So a good coach will make you uncomfortable, will put you out of your comfort zone so that you can achieve better things.
Track record doesn't necessarily follow that. So let me give you an example. A good footballer doesn't necessarily make a good coach of a football team. I've seen a lot of really good salespeople take on an office. Doesn't mean to say they're going to become a good leader. It doesn't follow that, does it?
Correct. You do have to be able to impart your knowledge, but what I meant before was, success leaves clues. It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in this industry, and it's true. You look at the best agents in our profession, and every one of them has had a real estate coach at some point. Okay, and all you got to do is have a chat with those people, and they'll lead you in the right direction. It's what I did, and there's a number of coaches who I've now used, and there's mentors that are successful in business outside of real estate who I obviously use for personal development and for business development as well.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given by a coach or a mentor?
One of the best pieces of advice I received was start where you want to end up when it comes to real estate, because obviously it's a long-term business. A lot of people get into this industry thinking to make fast money. I think when we've got a hot market like what we have now, you run the risk of those sorts of things happening, and I've worked in that market. Being in the industry now 12 years, I saw a lot of people come and go, and I think that damages the industry. So it's a long-term business, and if you take that attitude on it, you need to really think about where do you want to end up. So if it's Newcastle, if it's Charmhaven where I am, or whether it's Dubbo, it doesn't matter. You've got to think of the end game. Where do you want to be ending up in 10 years' time? Because that's when the business will really start to bear fruit.
Is that like the why? Like do you know the why of what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, yeah, I'm very clear on it. In my area, I feel that a lot of the technique, a lot of the technology, and a lot of the way things are done in our profession is very old school. So I'm making a very conscious decision to try and change those habits and use better technique, use better training, and become more professional. It's a bit of a debacle really when you can do a course online and then all of a sudden you can go out there and sell $1 million house. And I think that really is something which the industry could possibly do better to make sure that there are more checks and balances and get a higher skill set.
Is there a new breed of agent coming up?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that. How do you see that person?
Sooner the better too. I see them as hardworking, and I know all I can talk about is my experience in my office. I've restructured my entire office when my business partner retired nearly 2 years ago, and we made 11 staff changes, which was massive in an office of 13. So we made 11 staff changes, and we're patient with the people we brought on. The people we have on board now live locally, they work locally, they have families locally, they have good reputations, they're hard workers, and they strive to be the best. They train hard, they lead a healthy lifestyle, they're upstanding in the community. So I think real estate's had a bad name for a number of reasons over many years, but I think it can always be done better. We should always be aiming higher. And our office is an example. We all list auctions. We all use vendor paid marketing. We all use professional photography and floor plans and video. And we have a great sales team. We're not huge, but the people that we do have, we're growing slowly, and the door's always open for good people.
Knowing what you know now, is going back to when you first started, is there something you wish someone had told you then they didn't tell you?
Probably two things. Firstly, be careful who you take advice off. Okay, make sure that they know more than you do. So I took some advice off people early in my career that didn't really know what they were talking about. So that kind of slows you down. The second thing would be get a real estate coach as soon as possible. The sooner you get a real estate coach, you'll get perspective, you'll understand the daily things you have to do to stay in front of people. The more people you talk to, the more opportunities you'll have to list property. And the more opportunities you have to list property, the better you'll get.
Does having that coach make you more accountable? Is that what you're looking for? Accountability?
Accountability and technique. When you first start, you don't know anything, and you've got to really learn to fail faster, because the more failures you have, the more you learn, you can apply it, and then you get better faster. And that's the thing. There's some great people in our industry now who have been in the industry 2 or 3 years, and they're doing some tremendous sums. A lot of volume, and whether you're in $1 million environment or whatnot, which we aren't, we're in a very blue collar environment. I don't focus on the dollars, I focus on the transactions, because that's scalable through any marketplace in Australia or in the world, for that matter. So if you're doing a lot of volume, then clearly you've got a good sales process, you've clearly got good communication, you've got good follow-up, you've got good negotiation skills, because you don't get volume without all those things coming together. So what I do think is that a coach allows you to put all those things together. Makes it synchronise, and then helps you understand when is the next time to jump. When should you put your assistant on? In my marketplace, no one has assistants, so I had to look to completely different markets in Sydney or in Melbourne or in Adelaide, and I was looking at some great agents, people like Phil Harris and Ivan Bresic, people like that who I'd seen speak, and then you do research on them, and then success leaves clues, and then you find the coaches that these people are using. Next thing you know, you've got the same steps, and then you can replicate it.
Hello once again, and welcome to the show. Good to be back with you as we have a look at what's coming up with our auctions in the next week, and we get ready for a big day tomorrow, heading out to vote. And the market, we hear, is taking a bit of a breath. Geoff White from CoreLogic back in just a moment with all the details.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks, so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
Hello once again, Geoff. How are you, my friend?
Oh, very good, Kevin. How are you?
Good. Have you been out, done your voting?
Yes, I actually have. I've been one of those many that have gone out early, so done mine. But I wonder how many bidders tomorrow will be out voting on the way to auctions or after auctions. That would be an interesting one.
Well, I've often held the view that when there's an election on, you've got a lot more people out in mobile. There should be a lot more open homes because people are going to be driving to do their voting. So, maybe. Yeah. But we'll have a look at the auction numbers in just a moment. Geoff, But yeah, it is interesting, isn't it, as to what happens around election time. Mate, just before we have a look at the auctions for this weekend, let's have a look at the auction stats, the final figures, and we see Sydney came back a little bit on the preliminaries from Monday.
Yeah, about 6% or thereabouts, Kevin. Down to 59%, but I shouldn't say down. It's still a good number as a final. When you compare it to the week before, last week, 57.2. So it's up on the final of last week. So that's a good result for Sydney. Melbourne down a little bit on the last week, down to 55.7 from 546 auctions, from 56.6 last week. So a little bit down, but still, very, very close and consistent. I think the Melbourne market's starting to be relatively consistent across the sub-regions too. Brisbane, which should make you a little bit happier there, Kevin, up to 36.2 from 23 last week. So hopefully a lot better next week.
Well, mate, I hear that next week the clearance rate's about 100%.
Yeah.
Just in case you're new to the show and you haven't caught up what we're talking about, we're auctioning our property next Saturday. So we'll look forward to, not tomorrow, but next Saturday, and we'll look forward to telling you about that. So, it's good to see those Brisbane results. 36% is not too bad, actually, Geoff.
Yeah, that's okay. It's been in the 30s pretty consistently too. So
trying to talk it up a bit here, Geoff.
Yeah, let's talk it up there. Yes, we are. Adelaide was interesting because last week was 45.5, and it had a run in the 50s too, and this week down to 42.3. So that's one to watch as we move forward. Obviously, Perth sitting on 50% at 19 auctions, so that's a good result for Perth. Canberra now. What's going on in Canberra?
Wow, election. That's what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. 37.5 from 34 auctions last week. Of course, it was smack bang on 50, so down this week. So overall 54%, which is still a very healthy weighted average nationally. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to our second graphic. And while there was a reasonably good result out of Sydney, there were a few areas that were pretty patchy. Geoff, just having a quick look here.
Yeah, there was. You scan the percentages and you see obviously Central Coast at the lower end of the scale at 26.3 from 20. But then there's quite a few, in the 50s and 60s, and obviously the standouts are North Sydney, Hornsby with 77.6 from 61. And City
and Inner South the same.
Exactly the same. Yeah, that's right. From 57 auctions, so some strength in that market, and also in the inner southwest with 58.7, and of course eastern suburbs doing pretty well as well. Northern Beaches was a good one too, Kevin, 64%. So there is some really good strong sub-regions in Sydney. So nothing to really get too worried about up there.
Okay, we'll have a look at Melbourne and. The inner part of Melbourne, I know you've mentioned that before, it continues to be a concern.
Yeah, Kevin, it's interesting. Looking at that over the recent weeks, going back over the last month or so, it's consistently been in the 50s. And in fact, on the week ending 12th of May, not so long ago, it was 60.2% and has now gone down to 47.5. So a substantial reduction there. Analysing the data there, Kevin, it's clearly the unit market that's impacted there.
Righto.
55% of houses sold last week, while only 45% of units. So a 10% difference there. And sometimes the houses are even higher than 55%. So that's where it let itself down. And it wasn't the north or the south. It was pretty evenly spread. Maybe a little bit more in the north and the south that weren't as successful. So
interesting that you talk about units. Is that an indication that maybe we could have a bit of an oversupply in that inner area for units?
It could be, that's right. And everyone talks about the volume of units in Melbourne, whether they're off the plan or near new or whatever. But that could be the case, although I wouldn't really like to say. I mean, when it's been mid-50s, high 50s into the 60s in recent weeks. It might have just been one of those blips on the radar. So we'll see how that goes over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. One to watch.
Indeed. Okay, let's have a look at the auctions this week. As predicted, the numbers are down because of the election. Sydney just under, one under 300.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
right.
low.
It is pretty low, that's right. 868 auctions nationally. Now, there could be that in Melbourne alone next week, so we'll see.
Yep.
But, 259 in Sydney, 398 in Melbourne, well down, and we know the reason why. Many vendors would be contemplating either selling the week before, the week of, or even the week after the election. And I think a lot of them will go the week after. As a consequence, the numbers right around the whole country are down. Brisbane 70, Adelaide 80. So,
Do you reckon they know in Brisbane and Adelaide that there's an election on? I mean,
Well,
those
maybe
numbers
not.
are pretty good compared to Sydney and Melbourne.
Correct. They haven't varied as much. That's
No.
exactly a good point. And Melbourne and Sydney obviously have, and maybe a little bit more volatile to the sort of these sort of things that happen, like elections and long weekends and those sorts of things. Yes.
It's really been an interesting election, this one, to watch that sentiment, the consumer sentiment, maybe concerns about what's going to happen. Certainly in the run up, the banks tightening their lending criteria as well, and then word that Labor will probably do something with negative gearing if they do win, and it's likely that they will. All the polls are saying that's the case. So it really has had a big impact on consumer confidence, I think.
It has, and property's been in the newspapers and on TV every day almost for the whole election campaign, because the ALP went out early with their negative gearing policy, and obviously that's been unravelled over time in terms of not only of how it'll impact on investors, but how it'll impact on the whole of the property market. So whether you're a homeowner or an investor, it is likely to have some impact if the ALP win and introduce such a policy.
Absolutely.
So, so maybe that's had a bit of a bearing on it, and people have just been focused on getting through the election before they market their property. So,
well, as you said at the start, Geoff, a huge number of people taking the advantage to vote early as you did, but I'm going to be a good pollster. I'll head in there tomorrow, one of our open houses, and do my little bit and put a few ticks in a few boxes. What do you do, number them or tick them?
Oh, you got to number them, Kevin.
Number them.
That's
Yeah,
right.
okay.
And you can get a sausage on the way in, so you'll be all right.
There you
on the
go.
way out. Yeah.
Well, that's the incentive. Hey, Geoff White from CoreLogic, always great talking to my friend. Have a tremendous weekend. We'll look forward to talking to you on Monday, and we'll get a full wrap on what happened over the weekend, including the election as well. Good on you, mate.
All the best, Kevin. Thanks very much.
Evening, Clara. Home, please.
David, what's on your mind?
I was just thinking of a different time is all. It was a time when I used to sit up there, you know. Driving wasn't just about being taken from place to place and going somewhere. Feeling something along the way.
Please, David, you should relax.
I'm afraid that's just the problem.
David, where are you going? David?